We're now ready to get this walleye all skinned out. We have a couple tools for fish skinning. There's a fish skinning knife. I use a regular scalpel. I'll use some bone cutting scissors, and I'll just use some sharp scissors here. And I also have a few different kinds of scrapers that I'll use once it's all skinned out. Okay, now before we skin it, we kind of got to figure what pose we're doing. This one here, I'm going to do pretty much do a 360 type of mount. So I'm going to take my incision right along the back and cut it up through that way. Yeah, what we're going to do, we're going to start from the back then. We're going to kind of take our scalpel through a little bit here at the fin rays. And once we kind of get past the fin rays, we're actually going to take our pair of scissors. We're going to want to kind of slide it in and then cut the scales. We just want to be careful not to pull them. So by sliding them in and then cutting, you're not pulling quite as much. So it just kind of gives us what we want, and we'll kind of do that the whole way up to this head. Once we have the incision cut, we're going to take our fish cutting knife and we're just going to kind of start scraping it from the back to the front. Now your fish cutting knife is pretty much, it's got little sharp edges on it, but it's not like sharp like a knife, just enough to kind of work this flesh off. And we're just gonna working from back to the front. It just helps keep the scales from popping out. It just helps them keep in place a little bit easier than if you'd work the opposite way. You're actually working the scales a little bit, and you have a potential of losing scales a little easier. And because we have all the fins cut off, it makes it actually a little bit easier for us. We're not trying to go around fin butts or anything like that. The fins will be cast, and we will attach them on after we're pretty well done and painted with this fish. At this point, we're going to kind of go ahead and loosen this head up. I'm going to take my heavy duty shears here. I'm going to kind of cut along the bone here on the back of the head. Then I'll kind of cut the throat latch with it. And then I'll probably kind of work a scalpel along behind the gills just to loosen it up that way. But we're just going to kind of get this head completely removed off of this, and then we'll be ready to pull the rest of the skin off. Okay, the head's off. We're just going to work our fish skinning knife along the rest of this here. And once we kind of loosen it all off, we'll be able to pull this body out of here, and we'll be ready to kind of start scraping it a little bit. Okay, once again, we're going to be working from the tail to the front. Now I'm going to be using my widest scraper I have. We're basically just going to press it down in, and it'll pull any chunks of meat that are still stuck to the skin off. We're just going to remove all this meat. You'll notice some little white fibers that are hanging on. We'll try to remove everything there. We basically just want to get this down to pretty much just skin and nothing else. And once we kind of get this scraped off up into the head area, we're going to kind of have the bones that are around the gills. We're just going to clean everything up as good as we can. We're going to try to scrape everything off of those bones. Some of those we're going to have to kind of work under to get that meat out of, and some of these bones we will end up removing here. Now it's a little hard for me to show it here, but we're going to pretty much remove all this meat off of these bones, and then we're just going to kind of work them off. Some of these will come off completely. We can just kind of work around. Some of these we'll end up leaving on. Now if this was a cold water fish like a trout or something, all these bones will be removed just because there might be a little bit of grease that they can save in behind there, and then eventually cause issues down the road. The warm water fish don't cause that issue as much as trout do, so we're just gonna kind of cut them pretty close once we get so far. But we can work them off. We just kind of got to be careful that we don't tear the thin skin that's here as we go. Once we have all those bones removed up there, we're pretty much just going to come back here. We're going to make sure we got everything scraped off. Then we're going to take it over to the sink. We're going to rinse it off. And that'll kind of show any pieces of meat that were stuck here that we thought we had off. That'll just show if we missed anything. And then we'll make sure we have it good and cleaned up after that. Yeah. We kind of have a choice on what we want to use on our heads with warm water fish. We can use the real ones, or we can use the cast one. Or if you're using a cold water fish, I recommend a cast head every time. But the first thing we got to do if we're using this real head, we got to remove the eye here, and we're going to remove this cheek meat that's in here. We're just going to take our scalpel around this eye until we work. Sometimes it is a little tricky to remove this eye, but we're just working our scalpel the whole way along it, and eventually we'll be able to pop it out of here. What we're going to do then, we're going to take our fish skin and knife. We're just going to work it along the skin, and in between the skin and the flesh here. We're going to work it to the top and work it to the bottom. And then we're going to do the same thing with the bottom of or underneath. You're going to kind of feel a bone plate there. You're going to kind of work along the bone plate to the top and to the bottom also. Up with the fish skinning tool, I'm going to take a scalpel and I'm just going to kind of cut the edges anywhere, and we should get one nice piece that comes out. Most of the times I don't get that nice of a piece to come out in one. Usually it comes out in multiple pieces, but it is nice if you can get it out in one piece. And I'll just take my scalpel blade back in here and I'll just kind of work anything that I might have missed when I was cutting it. I usually do end up taking the narrow skin chicken tool, and I'll just kind of work that into there also, and that'll clean any other chunks that I would have laying in there. We will repeat this process on the other side. It's the same process on the other side, so I don't really need to show you that here, but we'll get both sides of these really clean. We're going to have to clean the back of this head off. I'm going to use my heavy duty snippers here, and we're just going to kind of cut the bone out here in the back of this head. We want to be careful that we don't accidentally go too far and cut the top of the mouth skin. Then we're going to take our small scraper tool and we're just going to get any meat particles out of this and just get it really nice and clean. Once this is clean, we're going to take it over the sink, rinse it off, make sure we got everything clean. We'll go over it again, and then we're going to be ready for the preserving process. For this one here, I'm going to be using the Pro 1 Fish and Bird Tan. I'm just going to follow the directions on the bottle and mix it up, and it'll be ready for me to mount this here tomorrow then.